So in the previous round, we saw Enigma come up on top in this fight. But in that fight, Enigma was on the top side of this, not this particular terrain, but rather the top side of the hill. And this time for both teams, they know the presence of each other are there, and the aggression is stopped because they know when they want to play against each other, the team that goes aggressive will be punished. Now for KE, they want to make up for that third place loss. Well, not loss. Is it loss placing? I would rather say they want to come up on top this time. And we're not seeing a very aggressive KE, but a KE that's more prepared to take up space, hold on to the area instead of just fighting out of their minds, which is honestly a very different approach to what we saw from GEM.
Yeah, and all of the teams are also predicting very well into this matchup, as it looks very similar to the first games that we had. And there's just so little areas to be secured. The rest of DX are currently stuck on that lower compound, also being blinded by their own smokes, where the rest of the teams are slowly signaling their eyes onto that.
Are FVE separated 2 by 2? Is that what's going on here?
Yes, exactly so, and I believe that this may not look advantageous at the moment, but they do have a lot of room to leverage on, because on these outskirts of Pachinki, this is more towards the western side, where you don't expect to have more players to be around that church area, assumingly that they've already cleared it out, and now receiving a little bit more idea of where the other teams are currently situated. But the problem with this is that they can't exactly commit to any of these fights.
For SK, we saw some pretty intense plays from them on round number 1, and it got quiet, but it's going to be Pov getting a pick onto a member of YG. So they're in trouble. They're struggling. Speaking of that, BGD as well. So these are very different fights happening at the same time from different areas. It starts off with a pick, and then it goes like this. How did it happen like this? Get it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sounds like a lyric from a song, but anyways, the top was looking from the top of the compound, and they will be the one to pick off Flash Vision Esports, like you said, being on the outskirts and being separated from the rest of the team. This is not really the best position to be at for the team of Singapore, but I believe there's a way out, at least for Moxie. But he's gonna have to travel on foot. Doesn't seem like he does have any form of vehicle. H2O currently has the best room possible, as they took over the stretch between Pachinki as well as school. Meanwhile, PBE, after clearing out Viper, they are still around the same location. They take control of the high hills.
We haven't seen any movement from these two teams, as though they're in a Mexican standoff trying to fight for that area, but no team wants to do the initiation. Regardless, for KE, this time they're in trouble. One member taking a brunt of the damage, and one member already out of the game. This is a very, I would say, a very brave play by Boy Sean. Him playing over in the open fields, while it is a high ground, it is very dangerous, as we do know that some of these teams do have a history, GM, have a history of running players over. And perhaps it will be a different way to play, but they're nowhere close. But the grenades are out, shots are shot here. I would have no clue who's shooting who at this point, but for BGE, well, BG Edward, taking that damage from the car exploded, he has to slowly make his way into the circle and not get detected by any of these many teams around him.
I'm just really curious that 2 rounds in a row, Burmese Goals decide to take on the open plains, and this time around, up close and personal is PBE flushing towards the rest of Anchor Pubg, pushing forward in towards the direction of the tree. They know that there's somebody out there. Rankit tries to suppress them, but they don't really have grenades to be cracked up just about yet, and now he does. Trying to prime this perfectly, and they will find most of these members down. Power did get that exchange and brings Rankit down 1-for-1 for the time being, but it's not secured just about yet. The kid tries to see whether if he could find the opening against Monboy, who's currently still alive, and he does connect a little bit of damage. Now, this 1-versus-1 situation between the two of them may not be resorted just yet. He's opting to get the Dacia to sprint out there.
So we look at YG instead. Pov is waiting for Sean to come up forward. They want to take the space, but Marnet wants to push up. He gambles with that grenade, throws it into the smoke. With no one in there, he's going to assume there's no one that side. So he can already assume that maybe Sean is behind that box instead. So he takes him out. So it's a very, very good read. Regardless, Flash Vision gonna be taken out at 10th place. A very unfortunate situation for that team. We do see the potential from them, the aggression coming through, but they haven't been able to clinch just yet. But speaking of clinching it, it's gonna be Arimon knocked out already, and Monboy picked up by a member of APG.
7 total eliminations being garnered by the rest of Justice Esports while they slowly sweep their way from the outskirts. Currently being sandwiched in between 2 teams, though. They have to pick their fights real quickly, whether if they want to go up against Anchor Pubg over on the far eastern sector. Instead, they pull back, and they are met with the rest of Enigma that's ready to gun them all down. And eventually, Master Ichi did manage to find a roadkill, knocking down Koopa with a drive-by on the close section of the play zone, and now they try to find themselves a little room to save themselves, but Atif clips them back as well. This is that situation where they really have to pick both fights at a time, and they don't really have the attention span, nor even time. Bless you.
For the members of TX, all the way in the southern side here, they're just being chilling right now, but you know who's not being chilling is GEM, picking up a lot of damage and this aggression from so many different teams, fighting their way into the circle. They're meeting 2 teams face to face right now. It's going to be Enigma finally decided to pull onto the trigger, and Spooky finding Master Zai. And it looks like Smile might be the second one out of the game, but with TX close by, it might be a whole different story. But with 2 members of GE out, this team has been completely tamed, and Enigma showing them why exactly they are on top right now. And speaking of on top, TX still holding on the top side of area, wants to go on the aggressive toward Enigma. Enigma, they've had time to reset, but we haven't seen the aggression come through yet. They haven't seen the commitment come through yet, as they kind of prefer this wait-and-see situation to kind of figure out what is the best approach to take in this situation.
Yeah, especially now that with 7 teams left, everyone needs to be really on their toes. H2O finally being challenged by the rest of SKR, as this close quarter combat does not look all too good, as somebody's being burned up from the side of H2O. And Fred, he's looking for an angle, but none of them are going to be running out the open. They are moving into the compound, and H2O tries to put up a perfect defense, as they are the noisy neighbors of this current location, where it's the only few compounds left possible in this current circle. Stage 6 looking rowdy and ever, and there's more grenades flying from the top of the hills as well. H2O, they're gonna have a little bit of blast, but still not finding anything in return. GE will turn out short into 7th place.
This is one of those situations where there's a huge festival happening and just fireworks in the middle of the night, and one of your neighbors just does not respect you and your space. And
Sounds familiar.
One of those situations. Yeah, I know. But for H2O, this is their prime time to really show up here.
Whoa.
They're just making it rain. Look at how many grenades they've thrown out here. Now, my concern is that they run out of throwables, and they won't be able to use it to their advantage eventually. But I guess this is the all-out play they needed. As a team with 0 points and 0 kills, they want to take this situation, take advantage of it. They want to go aggressive. They want to pick up those kills. They are very, very healthy right now. But the fact is, they're not exactly running out to take up the space from SK.
But Tash, this isn't really the final fight yet, and they're basically using so much utility, and once they do burn out, if the circle does shift, I don't see any of these teams having the advantage. But if they do have the circle upon them, go ahead, commit all you want, because now you see both sides, they're running low on those resources. They have to stand still. They have to respect those room as well as privacy. No more fireworks past this hour of the time, I do believe. As Anchor Pubg as well as Yango Galacticos, they have the same thing in mind. Wait for each of these other opponents to take each other out, and that's where they will strike after.
Look at where Mal is.
So
just chilling in this little corner. It is very cheeky. And if he gets a pick, you can already 100% think that it's going to be a very aggressive, but looks like the idea of them is going to go to the other side. Mal surrounded by 3 different players. Fred, so very low right now. Where is he going to go? I don't think he's going to survive this. Finally goes down, and this might be the worst case scenario for them, because look at that, they have to reset once again. Toki jumping down, finding the space, finding the right angles and corners to play in, doesn't want to be snapped, does not want to be cornered, but the other members of SKR is just having so many ways to just pass by each other. He still wins it, thankfully, with the better gun. But help is on the way. The sprays come through.
He gets it again.
Gets another. Oh my god, this 1 versus 1 isolation is so good. And look at where not Yahiko is. He's so very low. He has to get the reset. But to bring out his teammates again, he's not in a position to do that.
Now, 2 versus 3, much more manageable. So Labo really has to heal up in time. He does have a med kit to get back to 100%. While they do have a little time to reset as well, coming from SKR, respecting the territory, respecting the ground game from up top. And that's where they hop right down below. Hitsuo ready to strike. Labo cleans them up, and Hitsuo turns it right back against SKR when they batter and bruise. And the Singaporean team will reign supreme to make their way into the top 5.
Honestly, it's so shocking how we're down to the top 5, but all these fights are happening so far away from each other, which really shows how the rotations are happening, how the circle is moving. And look at how everyone is at the corner of circle. No one has full control of circle. Very different to what we saw in the last 2 matches. Now, H2O, this is not necessarily the best situation they want to be in. They did lose 2 in that situation, but coming up on top gives them that priority, the mindset, or the momentum. All they have to do is wait it out, play for picks, or go aggressive and get those isolation plays. Now, YG, while they did have a good track record in this match in particular, they did lose 2. This aggression is not giving them any favors as the circle is pushing up. Teammate knocked down, their vehicle gone.
And the momentum is swinging in favor of H2O after clearing up SKR in that fashion. Now they're picking upon the champions, and YG, because they're all being pinned into one particular angle, it makes things so much easier for other teams so long as they spot them out. Now YG absolutely in trouble. We see them having 3 members at first, now depleted down to 2, and they don't really have much to run, and they're currently on the outskirts. Meanwhile, they spot these 2 teams, but they're basically drawing all these attention to themselves. Toki doing it all, but they do have Labo still left standing. Sando getting pinned once again, and it's going to be APG that will make this a 3-way battle.
It's very unfortunate because Sando just picked up his teammate, and now it's a reverse situation. And they have nowhere to go. His teammates are around, but they're not able to actually do anything. But yes, Blue Zone is pushing through here. YG not able to take advantage of it. Sando goes down. His teammate is going to be next. Regardless of that, they are out. 5th place, not the worst place to be in. But look at the 2 teams who are absolutely healthy right now. It's APG and TX. Now look at Heng taking up that space. He is not scared. He is fearless, taking up space, going to the smokes, getting that pickup onto his teammates. But for H2O, perhaps getting that unwanted situation was not the best way because they are on the lower ground. They are getting pushed by the circle, and they only have smokes to play with, and his teammate is gonna go down. APG is just spraying, praying, trying to get those points, trying to make up for lost time. But look at APG Shout, watching on the other side, making sure they're not getting flanked.
And that's all that's left for H2O. Respectable top 4 finish. The best fight that we've seen throughout the course of Angle, and now it's all about the high ground game. TX finally unleashing upon both APG as well as Enigma, as they've already cleared out the rest of Enigma on the top 3 situation, and now it's down to Hang to push forward and burst this vehicle down. That UAZ will not last for long, and someone like going up close and personal, going for some quick restocks as well. The grenades are now primed into the back of the crate, but what's going to be hiding right there? That grenade is huge upon the rest of Anchor PUBG. This is the time to shine for the X, and X marks the spot. They will have to push forward, but they're taking their sweet time. This is actually allowing time for Anchor PUBG to go for that reset.
I'm honestly surprised that TX is not playing this a little bit aggressive. They have the high ground advantage. If they were to push up, they can win this fight. But they don't want to take any chances, and I don't blame them. Especially after the luck we've seen from them for the last 2 rounds, this might just be the best situation at hand. They also have a care package nearby. Hang is currently looting that. It can give them a lot of advantage if used right. Regardless, as time is ticking, the circle is closing. This is where things get really scary. But APG, this time, they are going to be initiating. They are going to be pushing up. They're playing on the prone here, trying to find that nasty angle to come through. But it's going to be Aaron who spots them out first. Finds one, clips them, and suddenly it's all chaos coming to an end. Sonic narrowly dodges that grenade. And Hang still hiding behind that care package. If Hang can just swing out, get those sprays, he might be able to get a good spray transfer coming out here. But the other members of TX taking a lot of damage.
They're just taking the spacing. They're taking 50% of the map. And DX, they're also stepping outside of the zone. They have to be really careful because right now, there's only so little spacing left for the side of Pubg. They still get the pick upon Hang to turn things around. 2 versus 3. And Pubg basically turns up the heat. And power finally being suppressed. They did spot Sonic, so they will have the final information left necessary. 2 versus 1. Down to Sonics as well. It's all down to this. Can they actually pick him off in time? He's hiding right behind the UAZ to run for a little cover. Now they go in for a double attack. Can they actually get this chicken dinner in the back with this advantage in hand? Sonic will not have much time. He has to deal with the situation, and it will be pinned now. Anchor with a huge reversal to secure the winner chicken dinner.
What a great situation from them, despite not having the high ground, playing on a terrain. They just waited patiently. Now, perhaps the mistake was in TX's hands. They were not proactive, they didn't want to push up, and they waited way too long. The right play would have been to push them while they were down, and perhaps we might see TX come out on top. Regardless, for this APG, while they have had a pretty, I would say unsuccessful run earlier, they're showing us that why they want to come out on top and why they are one of the more veteran teams here. The advantage, or rather the experience, is showing in that particular game.
And Anchor Pubg, despite having last-minute roster swaps as well, not having Zero to be the captain on the respective team, they still find this success. And I think like this reversal was so huge because the X, they just decided to go in for a reset, which it's absolutely not necessary because all 4 members were left alive. They were taking 35% of the map, eventually became 50%, and I'm not too certain as to why they give that breathing room away. Sure, 1 member was knocked, but there was so little room. They should have known that was that perfect time to strike, and because they held back, Anchor Pubg, they just retaliated perfectly.
Taking an advantage of a disadvantageous situation is one of the lovely things that we love to see here over at the PMPLC Wildcard Spring. And this is definitely going to go inside of the highlight reels. As we casters, we're going to just try and analyze this. The new players are going to analyze this, and they're going to say, this is something that we do not want to see in the future, because perhaps playing reactive might not be the play. And as we see, the MVP here is going to be Shroud. And are we honestly surprised? We've seen his performance last season, and we're seeing it again this season. Look at the amount of damage he has put out here, and barely any damage to himself. With a 42% team contribution, it really shows that not only is he pulling his weight, but he's also proactively going on aggressive, making space. And I was interviewing Zero before. He said Shroud is the Shroud of Angkor.
Yeah, I mean, his name speaks for himself, right? Like, overall, he still has all these retaliative effort to be able to turn the match around.
Travel distance.
Yeah,
look at that.
They had the roughest of journey as well to move into the respective final zone. And I would say it wasn't easy for them because you saw that they were also challenging all the other teams across that cross-section of Pachinki as well as School. And look at how much of smokes they managed to utilize. 38 smokes, Tash. 38.
Dang. It's actually insane when you think about it. It really shows how far they've traveled, right? Because of how much loot they have, how much resources they have. They were like, we go big, we go home. We're gonna loot everything, and we're gonna use it to our advantage. And I have to say, this was one of the more prepared situations they were had. But I have to say, compared to map 2 and map 3, map 3 I would say is a lot more aggressive, but in the best way possible. It wasn't really a situation, those fights where it's kind of like, oh, we passed by each other, we're just gonna get kills. It's as though this was all calculated. This was all already understanding, these players understanding where exactly each player is gonna drop, where exactly we can expect to meet these teams as each team passes their pit stop, or rather their checkpoints. And in this situation for APG, proactive plays this time, really learning what exactly they did wrong in the last 2 maps, really shows what exactly they have learned and how exactly they're able to adapt on the fly, giving them 22 points.
Looks like everybody who secured a chicken dinner today will walk away with 22 points. I want to see in this upcoming match that somebody will eventually break this barrier, but every single time that we move into the final zone, the respective team will need a few things. enough manpower to work things out, and also enough firepower to at least turn a massive 12-pointer of eliminations, which is the prime number that we've had for the past 3 rounds. So, of course, other than that, we have the X that have secured their best round so far. Second place finish as this Cambodian squad have also been able to reap all these rewards. But we see a trend running at the moment. Teams hailing from Myanmar, Yangon Galacticos, as well as GE have been able to thrive for the past couple of matches, and they walk away with respectively 9 points as well as 8. And then from 5th place to 9th place, we got Enigma, H2O, SKR, as well as Khmer Esports to secure evenly 7 points.
You know what's really interesting here? The amount of teams that came out with 0 points. We didn't really see as many that didn't have points in the previous matches, which reiterates my point on how aggressive this match is, because we saw fights very early. We saw a lot of teams dropping out in each other's places. Now, I was really interested as to why this happened, because the flight path wasn't necessarily skewed in one area. Anyone can go to where they want to go, but these active choices by these players to take the high risk, high reward plays, take those early fights, is really showing us what exactly they have in mind as to how they want to take these maps.
Exactly, and now we get a quick update of our total rankings for all the respective teams. Yangon Galacticos, despite only playing 2 matches, look at where they are. Number 1 on the chart, and this team does have a formula for success, just like their predecessors overall. And then you look at all the teams that are currently on the first page, majority consisting of teams of Cambodia.
Team of Cambodia are really showing us how they are setting the bar here on day number 1. Regardless, it's going to be teams that are at the bottom that are struggling, because Vipers, if we remember, they had a good start on map number 3. But then it just went downwards after that. And I'm just honestly trying to figure out like what exactly went wrong here, because we talked about them, like the potential coming through, the expectations, and we haven't really figured out what exactly did not allow them to flourish further.
Yeah, I think like there is just a lot of things that happened inside of that particular round of angle where it was very difficult for them to really secure real estate. And the reason why is because they were forced to play on the high ground terrains where certain teams who have already been there from the get-go, they had that advantage, such as Team X, where they were also doing that very early on. Now, of course, we're getting ourselves ready for our 4th match, which we will finally switch over to the other map itself, which is going to be the vast terrains. But before we even get there, please follow us on all our social media platforms, on Facebook, YouTube, as well as TikTok. It's all on your screen. And, you know, you want your own local language content, you can find that as well. So go ahead. If you see it on your screen, just go ahead, type it on your phone, and voila! You can get all the updates you want about PUBG Mobile and PUBG Mobile Esports.
So moving into Miramar, as Contra mentioned before, we are going to be seeing the vast terrains. So this map is known for, the most importance is looking for vehicles. It's a very big map, very vast areas to navigate, as the rotations will be further up, because there are some high terrains that you can't basically navigate. We've seen situations where teams decide to go for the high ground and the circle pushes downwards and suddenly they're in trouble. We've seen situations where the high ground gave them all the advantage in the world and all players had to do was, you know, cherry pick kills from the top side. So it is interesting to see how exactly the circle will be feeling today as we go into that map. And it also shows a new prowess or a new way of thinking from these players on how exactly they want to play this map in particular.
Exactly, and then when it comes down to Miramar, there's going to be a lot of long-range battles as well to find those early openings, and I'm looking at some of these teams to be pretty good at it. Of course, we start off with Astia, where they had such a stellar start, and then Game Labs. With that finesse early game, I have been impressed myself, where I'm also looking at PBE, who have always been seeking out for all those elimination points. So these are the 3 teams that I'm still looking out for. As for your side, I think like these are really solid names that you have.
I mean, for YG, yeah, we've seen the potential. We've seen them already get a chicken dinner tonight. But I've always been a fan of the underdog story. Now, for Flash Vision and the Vipers, I think that we saw the potential. We saw the aggressiveness that can play. We saw the outplays that can potentially happen, but they weren't in the situation to come up on top. And I really want to see the story progress on how exactly these teams can learn from the early days, from the day one, day two, and where they can put themselves, especially as the week ends. I mean, there are some more weeks coming through for the wild card, but how much longer do you want to go before you finally show your true colors?
Exactly. You gotta get that hit start. You really want to put all out effort so that other teams would respect you from week one onwards, where morale eventually will go down once you wait for those sort of openings. Leave nothing to luck. It's all about effort, especially when you're playing in a league by its own. I understand that maybe in the past, for the wildcard regions of Southeast Asia, they compete in a 2 to 3 day window, and perhaps this is relatively new to some of them, where they will really be tested in terms of their stamina. How much time do they have for practice? How much time do they really commit to the tournament? And whoever gasses out first will also eventually lose out a lot of points in the upcoming week. So they gotta also ration in, like, how much effort do you really do want to put, especially for teams that really relies on momentum. You really gotta start strong. But for teams that are pretty much stable, like Yangon Galacticos, where you have a formula that works for yourself, repeat that formula, look for any cracks in between, and perhaps you will better yourself from that point onward. So many ways for teams to look at how they could assess some of all these situations, but I think, like, for now, at least we're getting a little bit of everything from everybody, don't you think?
Yeah, I think everyone's really just showing what exactly they have to offer in terms of team play. And at the same time, we are also seeing new blood. And when it comes to new blood, I always talk about this in terms of like what to expect from new players and new teams. And in these kind of situations for wild card, yes, they are new blood, and we can't really expect too much because seasoned players have a different experience, a different sort of mindset when it comes to playing these games competitively compared to the newer players. So I think like one of the most important things is just to keep competing and understanding and learning as you go around there, which is why like teams like Axis Fighting is also Axis Fighter is also something that I am looking forward to seeing, because fresh new blood, fresh new team. If I'm not mistaken, the roster was only just announced recently, and they have a lot of shoes to fill, especially as they come from, quite a legendary team that's made their mark in the PUBG mobile scene.
Yeah, I believe that at least for Axis Fighter, they've been around for a couple of seasons already, though they may have not made their debut during then, supposedly, Pmpl, MYS, GPH. Now, of course, they're facing off against very unfamiliar opponents, where if you're talking about scrims, maybe they only have a couple of months to prepare, not as long as compared to back then, where you know who exactly you're going up against. At the same time, like, they need to really find things that works out for the team, and therefore, I hope that as for Miramar, it allows them a little bit more room to try to have a little bit more safety net in that early game, because we understand teams will take their sweet time to loot up and stuff. So, of course, we'll get them enough time to get themselves ready for that.
Speaking of getting ready, I always kind of like got curious, because we have sister teams sometimes in this situation, or these teams in these games, right? It's always like, do they learn from the older brother or older sister team? Do they play together? Do they share their play styles and secrets? And we want to see whether or not this has been happening. Regardless, as we move into Miramar now, I've really been wishing for a prison circle, and everyone tells me it's never gonna happen. But I am never, ever gonna stop believing in that circle.
Well, I don't know who you really want to visit on that corner of the map of prison, but like overall, I will take what I'm getting. I've always wished for that northern oasis setting, so perhaps either of us won't be that lucky this round, but only, the lords of PUBG will decide for us. And speaking of which, we are ready to get our parachutes off of this map. And this is Miramar.
Miramar. Good to be back. My favorite part about this map the long-range kills. I always look forward to see who gets the longest kills, who gets the high ground advantage. But now, as we go, the flight path will be coming from Impala all the way to La Drillera. Those who drop over at La Cabrera, Torre Alhumada, Crucival, and as well as water treatment, etc., will be facing some trouble. Now, if we were to see how Pmpl MYSG played, these players mostly would just walk up towards their respective drop spots and just choose to loot from there. But we are no longer in MYSG. We are no longer in PH itself. We are here in SEA Wildcard, where, as wild as it sounds, we cannot really predict what these players are thinking. And a lot of them we've seen play the aggressive game, play the very last resort situations, desperate plays come through, and that is fun to watch.
Indeed, and speaking of the Wild Wild West, this is the Wild Wild East section of a start from Impala all the way to La Drillera that doesn't really offer much room for teams to actually play on that northern sector, but teams are still vying to get back to their respective hometowns, which means there may just be contests for vehicles, which might actually see majority of them actually fighting it all out just to get their hands on what's worth. But first phase of the circle has already appeared over onto the sector of El Pozo as well as Montenevo, meaning to say, honestly, there's not much time and room for them to loot from, especially I'm looking at teams that started off early. Sin Esports will be kicking things off from the corners of Junkyard. They gotta make their in time, and therefore, look at this sector. Like we said early on, expect a little bit of feisty fights to kick things off.
It always happens in these early situations. And if we saw the, I would say, momentum of the map earlier, it was action throughout the entire time. There wasn't really a cooldown period. But I'm wondering if it'll be different on this map. Because if you remember from previous seasons, it was going to be those early fights and then a huge cooldown until 5-6 minutes, and that's a different story. But it's going to be the kit that opens it up, finds Nasty, sends him to the lobby, no pickups, no takebacks, no refunds.
Not at all, and Axis Fighter really picked on the wrong enemy to start off their match inside Miramar. Anchor Pubg just got off of a 12th elimination spree inside of Erangel, and you know, they're not even giving them any form of rest or laurels, and well, that is all that they could possibly take for the time being, which, mind you, Shroud as well as Atif, they're up close and personal. It's all down to Baby to hold them all off.
Not a great situation, but it's still a great pick. It's gonna be TF picked up here, the kid, going for a very, very long rotation, but Baby finally goes down. She has been the one to get those picks, but this time around it's gonna be Chi-Chi that will be trading her out there. Not the worst situation to be in, a 1-for-1 trade, and I think that's fair. But if you look at FOD right now, they lost 3 players already, and I'm really curious as to what happened there, because that is a huge loss very early.
Yeah, Anchor Pubg suddenly have been overwhelmed. They were only using SMGs, and in terms of gear, you don't expect them to have as much as that warehouse can only provide. Good enough for one, I would say. They were sharing the same compound. And then this push upwards and that perfect elevated area that Baby was looking upon have definitely allowed these 2 picks to happen. And Anchor Pubg, I don't think they have much time to actually retrieve Atif. They will have to play with 2, and perhaps maybe a big wraparound would catch the rest of Axis Fighter off guard. So, as much as they didn't really have the best start for Axis Fighter, they managed to salvage the situation and turn things better. And it's already a really good sign for the team hailing from Singapore. Now, looking into some of the other regions as well, I believe it'll be a little bit quieter as compared to Jumatera.
Oh, Baby. She got one more there. Great situation. Gets 2. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No worries.
Because I was just like really excited to see Axis just kind of like pull up, you know? Especially after their track record earlier. And it's always fun to see these teams that's lower, playing out at the bottom side here, just really pull up, show off their fangs, and show us why exactly they deserve to be here. Because these teams have potential, but in some situations they weren't able to show off what they have, and when they do, it's very exciting to watch.
That's true, and there's only more good things to come for Axis Fighter, as they've managed to at least gather a few points in this particular round. As for the past 3 round, including maybe a brick round for Axis Fighter as well, Of course, those starting rounds weren't exactly the best. They only had 1 point route, those round averages. And now adding 2 is a good step, double of what they had through those efforts so far. And teams, it's not about how they first start off sometimes. It's all about how they finish, like you said earlier. Now, we'll definitely want to see what else turns up for Axis Fighter, but at the meantime, Asja, we've seen them going guns blazing, but for now, as in the map like Miramar, you really have to do your due diligence.
Different energy.
Yeah, very different energy, right? Like, you got to do your scouting, you got to look around, you got to look for those loots, and you talk about loot. Scanning's only got, like, maybe just the basics down for the time being. You'd still need a lot of smokes, a lot of frag grenades, stun sometimes, depending on the player, if they're comfortable, and if your team actually trusts you with it, with the stuns.
Yeah. Yeah. The stuns can be very, very good. I really want to see more, I would say, proactive plays. I was just talking about long-range plays. Here's one of them. Our Game Lab Alpha is the one suffering. He's almost like I would call him a mountain goat, you know? They're just holding over at the edge of the high ground terrain. That's exactly where he is. That's exactly where Kai is, a goat. But in this situation, the goat can't run away, and it's knocked out.
There's this
unfortunate
ancient quote that says, "As clever as the squirrel is, the higher you climb, you will eventually fall."
Not a goat. Come on.
You can go with goat as well, but you know,
you don't remember the OG meme? We crave the mineral.
We crave the mineral.
Oh, maybe my age is showing there. Whoopsie.
Yeah, like, I'm not too sure about minerals, but they do need a little bit of mineral water in their packs as well. I mean, look at the dry dust and the sandy dunes. Like, and speaking of resources, right? It doesn't come in plenty, but it must. At least he starts off with a level 3 vest, which is going to help him so well. And mind you, they're starting off from the far corners of these map and finally cutting through into Picado, into the central sector. GE, I want to see how well do they fare in terms of long-range fights as well, because we see most of the time when they do pick up fights, it's mostly coming out of mid to short range as well, where they have full complete mastery of, which, without a shadow of a doubt, West have been the marksman of the team, as we see 300 over damage on an average per round, which is kind of absurd if you ask me. That's almost to a certain that he secures at least a 2-pointer every single match.
The aggression will come around. It does show in the stats. And Van is the one to be eating that nade. Does get a trade back, but G-Lab just gonna be tactically retreating from now. We've seen this before. A team inside the compound that's not proactive. A team outside. Now remember, if you are outside, you don't have a compound, and you're holding this area too long, you are way more vulnerable outside than inside, because you are prone to being hit by other teams. You are prone to those long-range shots. You are prone to being run over by a vehicle, because that is a very open area.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I do understand why they play defensively as well. Maybe they're not too confident, and once you get picked, you expect this opposing team to swarm in from all angles as well. So, it is a difficult decision to make, but of course, we'd love to see a little bit more proactivity coming in from the team, respectively. Meanwhile, we see a little bit of a bird's eye vision across the map. Majority of teams are cutting across the sector of Power Grid. Expect to see a lot of fights throughout the hill. Meanwhile, Yangon Galacticos have a problem of their own as well. As we speak of it, the trades are coming in. KE trying to find ways to take advantage of Dragon, who is currently left all alone, and nothing much that Scotty can do but to actually make a move out of this situation.
I'm honestly shocked that G-Lab wasn't able to protect their area. And on top of that, KE, their aggression will be rewarded. They get 2 picks out of that. And now they have to go away. They have to give up the compound. And they get, and KE gets the kills as well. But if you look at Osja as well, they got a pick onto APG's players. And for APG, the team that got a chicken dinner just now, coming into this map with a win that big, the momentum, they hope to bring it forward, must be pretty frustrating. But Newbie gets exploded, just like his name, 666, the number of death, and Game Lab is out of the round.
Oh boy.
4 points though in the pocket, not the worst way to go.
Yeah, and G-Lab, you know, like, the way that they handled the situation, I guess like they weren't expecting a push in time, and they don't really know where exactly to run off to. Scott did try his level best, and Anchor Pubg, you know, for them to lose out so many members early on in a particular fashion that they were the ones being proactive, but instead being punished in return, it doesn't really look to be the best, especially early games commitments. You have to be very careful.
Baby.
And yep, Axis Fighter, they will lose 1-2.
I'm really sad because she has been getting those unexpected picks. It's always fun to watch her point of view. Regardless, her out of the game means that it's another member of Axis going down. Doesn't this give you deja vu for the main roster of Axis, the brother team rather, where they would always lose one by one, bit by bit, but the shotgun to the face gives Deja the extreme satisfaction that he wants. But at the same time, YG is in trouble as 2 more members that's knocked down.
They're just leaving no stones unturned. I mean, that's a place that almost nobody will check, but they've kept their eyes really close and have marked them all along. Axis Fighter absolutely being depleted, leaving only one standing in the way, and West Point, Mamba, they have some long-range shots to show off as Anchor Pubg. They don't really have much in return. One final player just hiding right underneath the noses of West Point Mamba. Federalis will be giving a little bit more supplement towards who I do believe is Amas, who's currently in charge of taking him out. While the rest of KE, they just take over that section where they clear off some of all these players much early on. And West Point Mamba, they could actually do exactly the same to KE, what they did to players of Game Lab.
It would be really funny if that actually happened. It's like instant karma, right? But for Amas, I'm not sure where he got. Oh, he got caught out by H2O there. It's honestly really interesting to see all these long-range picks coming through, and YG, another member knocked down. Honestly, this has not been their round. Look at that. They're in trouble now as FOD pushes up. His teammate is outside, but Nangzut pushes forward, gets 1 pick onto him. He's so very low. Not picked yet. His teammate will be reviving him, but Nangzut, he's on his own. Last person left alive. The reset is there. You hear his footsteps. Sprays out. Doesn't see him. Takes a little bit of damage here, but it's going to be FOD that comes up on top.
Yeah, great trades, nevertheless. Now Fuse left out all alone, but we've seen some of these situations before, and it's going up against his ex-member QB as well. And just look at Fuse fighting there for his life. He will bring one down and have pinned out another. He's looking for the other angle, and QB immediately going for the save as well. He's basically second-guessing, and Few, he's basically infiltrating, pulling ring around the Rosie, and Few, he's getting tagged. QB 1 versus 1, and his ex-team won't get him back in return.
Enigma. 2 players down, and QB, there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Getting shot at from Marnet as well as Power on the other members of Power. The reset comes through. I don't know if he's gonna make it out alive, but if he does, it'll be a big game changer. But that pincer from both sides, a double swing, perfectly played by Power, as though they said 1, 2, 3, let's swing out together. Nice.
Yeah, and what's even nicer is he brought in the M249 in Miramar, right? Like, the weapon with the most amount of recoil, but it doesn't matter, right? This guy, you just need to land 1 bullet. It's just like him sneezing on this giant piece of tissue. Like, he's never gonna miss. Like, I don't even know, like, how much could they actually handle. Power finally stepping up to the plate, especially with Few popping off in that instance. And remember that, it was a 1 versus 3 at first. He almost brought all 3 down by himself until these backups come into the picture.
This is when you really learn the power of teamwork, the power of swinging together, moving together matters, and not getting isolated. Because sometimes even 1 player can do so much damage to your team. And we know strength in numbers has always been one of the most important things to worry about when it comes to this game. Now, it's going to be between Monte Nuevo as well as Power Grid here. As you can see, KE, WPM holding on to that nice terrain. It's almost like they're sharing this terrain. They have an unspoken gentleman's agreement until time runs out. But meanwhile, we're looking at the other members of Oja. I think that they want to play this high ground area. It might be a good thing for them as they go into the circle, but look at how much shots are out there. SK, they want to get this fight, but we saw those sprays just now, none of them actually hit any of the members.
Yeah, and despite that, like, Austria just have some vision advantage as well. They spot out Marcos and they are chasing for it. AstroX, despite smoking a vehicle, he's going to push for it. 3-man versus 1, and he is just stepping on the pedal to the metal to try to salvage the situation, but he's about to be burned out, and the members of SKR are even retaliating, and thankfully he gets into a safe zone, but AstroX will still find the angles to return. Power also looking
I was about to say, he got away scot-free.
And then that happened.
But Austria said, no, they're not done. Just wait. And they get that really long-range kill onto them. SK wasn't even able to do anything. They weren't able to revive. They weren't able to even get a trade out of that, because that was a very interesting angle they played. It was high ground, but a narrow one that passes by that, I would say, that terrain plus the buildings as well. So you can't really trade out from the area unless you have that high ground advantage on the other side. But speaking of advantages, it's gonna be Vipers on the aggressive. H2O in trouble as Deja. That is a very insanely scary spray.
Yeah, and that's also from a long range. They find them right on the outskirts of the compound, and look at how sharp they are. This is about close to 200 meters onwards where they're currently picking them off from, but there should be enough room for the rest of H2O to go in for a quick reset. Speed, not wasting much resources, opt to go in for bandages, and they do notice there is another team by the other sector as well. So what the rest of Vipers are currently doing is to gate members of H2O from getting inbound into a deeper territory of the circle. Asia will have to also keep them in check as well, should they want to do the same to Vipers.
How long have they held on to this area after they took over that real estate? They didn't have to move because the circle has always been in their possession. And I think, like, out of all the high ground area in that particular terrain, they have won the gold mine because it's an area that's close, is surrounded by a lot of buildings. So speaking of buildings here, it's going to be H2O and the Aggression fighting the last two members of Power. Wako and Range put some damage onto Miles, but it's going to be a trade from Labos at least. So this is the most aggressive I've ever seen them. Wako, he picks off 2. He drops 2 actually. With Fred outside all alone, resets come 2 on Miles, and Toki goes down. Wako is making damage happen to H2O before finally going down, and this man showing that he is not going down without a massive fight.
And they all just have this individual prowess with them, even though they were absolutely outnumbered. Power have absolutely impressed me, because he almost eliminated 3 members of H2O by himself. And it really boils down to that one final moment, but H2O will have their own redemption return now that the dust have settled in. Not so much for Camper X, dealing with Skynin, another veteran member of the Cambodian region. And this long-range battles, they're not settling anytime soon. But it's problematic for us, yet they don't have vehicles to run right in. Yes, they do have this buggy, but the moment that they sprint off, they're going to be clipped. And speaking of which, Astro is on the ground already.
Astro's been really unlucky. If you notice, he's always been the first one knocked down, but it's okay because Skynin is here to make everything better. We have seen the expectation fall onto his shoulders in round 1. Maybe he can redo it again. And for H2O, I am shook that they lost absolutely no one in that massacre. They got the resets, but Mal Alz is very low. Now, APG, the kid, they think they are suspecting where he is. But speaking of that, Rain with the sprays. Skynin gets knocked down and clipped. And the sprays still come through from Rain. You mentioned this was a very, very long-range shot coming through. And I think the Vipers, they want to play this way, and it's been working on their favor.
And we taught that Vipers, you know, being a snake, it means you're going to go up close and personal. No, they can basically give you a taste of their poison from afar. Holy Launcher, though, subbing right in, and Sin will be able to find those picks going on for the team. GE, however, has quite the outreach from the outskirts to find some picks going on in favor of them. Sin now being pincered by West Point Mamba as well. this is not going to be the best position for them to fight things out, while MS taking the high elevated hills might actually spot some players out there, but H2O are keeping themselves inbound inside the compound, whereas KE, they are
Wow,
just
H2O.
holding on to this site for the longest of time.
That's a three-way fight between WTM and H2O and Vipers. But H2O this time, despite the reset, you saw 2 people go down. And there's also going to be a fight with Deja as well. We saw that H2O wants to get that refrag onto Vipers. So this three-way fight is a very interesting one because I have no clue where WPM is because we saw them get actually 2 picks just now. I think one of them may have already been lobbied.
That's true, and there's just going to be more names to be lobbied through the screens, Camper being one of them as well. SKR, despite them being in a precarious situation, they did manage to find 1 member out of there. So, now, heading into a top 12 situation, we're seeing almost every single team to be very heavily involved in battles, except for Sydney Sports currently. Despite having 4 members, they have yet to find themselves that first pointer in the back.
Man, for Axis, I think this may just be one of the longest surviving moments they have survived in the game so far. They did lose 1, but they still have a decent amount of players. Actually, no, it might just be Chichi, actually. The other members may have already been picked off, but look at where YG are. There are 2 packages in their area. That's a big advantage.
Yeah, if in doubt, follow the crates, and you might actually get the circle along as well. And just take a look at the position of Marnay. Like, he's on the outskirts. Eventually, he will find a little bit more window to cut right in. But he might also need to face off against the rest of GE. So that could prove to be a little problematic for YG, who currently has 3 members. Maybe losing 1 in return if they are not careful enough. The top gets in, finds Andrew. Falcon loses 1. Meanwhile, the rest of West Point Mamba have been able to hold out their own, and this might just actually be their round so long as they keep finding their optimal point of engagement. But for the time being, they only got that 1 pick off, and things are slowly turning into a more dangerous state as stage 6 approaches.
And for Sin, they got the advantage by, oh my god, FCon? Just dying to the play zone. They aren't able to get inside of the circle. 10th place with only 1 elimination point is not the ideal situation they want to go on at. Regardless, for Sin, you don't really want to butt heads with GE. We've seen how aggressive they can be and how fast they move in terms of whenever you get a pick, they rush forward, and before you can even blink, they're around you. But for the kid here from APG, he's stuck. Where are you gonna go? You cannot run behind because it's a flat area. H2O will see you. You can't climb up either. That terrain is not in your favor.
Yeah, and I'm looking at H2O, they do have the circleless advantage, so I feel like if it does sway in their favor, they might actually have another great round. If it doesn't, they do have a little bit more open window to run, but there is West Point Mamba over on the top side of the hill. And speaking of which, West Point Mamba does find the final member of APG, eliminates them on 9th place, and Pop, my goodness, finds a moving vehicle and snaps it directly to the head, and he gets another one, almost getting Lanju, but because of the tension that he's drawn out, Federalis will pin him down.
This is a very scary situation, but GE on the aggressive, KE as well at the same time, but it's going to be Sin that's in trouble, sandwiched between 2 of the heavy-hitting teams right now. They are going to take so much damage. Moy going to be the first one down. There's still another, I believe, 2 players still very much alive, but it's going to be GE's problem. YG pushing forward. They want to take this fight onto H2O. H2O chill as a...
cucumber.
I can't find something that rhymes with it. Chill as a cucumber, yes. They are not moving at all, but the damage is coming through. And perhaps the chilling isn't the way to go as Vipers and YG have all their attention onto them. H2O drink it and probably just leg it out of there as Fredals will be the first one to be knocked down.
Boy, oh boy, look at the intensity of the situation. Majority of the teams really don't want to give too much vital information. Whereas KE, despite them being in the slum area for the longest of time, they do find a little bit more of a window to eventually move in. Sin absolutely dodged that fight, but if they are not careful, the rest of KE can basically strike them down as they start to rotate into the circle. As for H2O, they have that direct access from the south side. despite them being so far away. So with that region cleared off, all they have to look out is those long-range shots coming from West Point Mamba. And for Vipers, they're just trying to sneak their way through. So I don't see any teams that have clear advantages in this regard, especially even for GE. They do have the numbers, and Marty's just slowly getting shredded. Master Zai, he's just gonna be sneaking upon him and will draw blood, but he's down, but not out. So there should be a little bit more helping hand coming from the rest of YG.
GE, if you remember Master Zai, that is a very, very long long flank rather. They were trying to sandwich, but the commitment coming through, the fact that it's on a lower terrain is very scary.
Oh,
Master Zai has already repositioned once again, but the sandwich, round 2 for YG, not the best situation to be in. The top will be the first one knocked down. He does have some cover,
Romeo?
but getting that reset will be the problem. But Mare finally goes down, and Top does get blown to smithereens as Master Zai gets YG, and it's going to be our top 5 now. Still
securing a little bit of ranking points overall. Didn't really seem like the best round for Yangon Galacticos, but the show goes on. Compare Esports leaving with only one player standing in the way. Same goes to Sin Esports as well, as they were trying to avoid the altercation against KE. And speaking of which, both teams with those low numbers eventually will slowly be wiped off. Sin still surviving, however, heading into the top 4. Smile drops a big grenade, and eventually Speed will be the one to be flipped off as well. West now trading right back. They do get those perfect vision, and I don't really see a reason why not to pick onto the rest of Vipers. They will make their way into the top 3.
Oh, the Vipers just showing everyone what they're made of. Regardless, they are now out of the game. WPM, the aggressive team that we've seen again and again, this time wants to show why they want this chicken dinner, and they want it really bad. As for GE, while they are aggressive, they are reaping what they sown. They have 2 players knocked down. They can go for the revive, and I think it's exactly what's going to happen. So for the members of WPM, perhaps the best time to push is now, but they have no information where the other members of GE are. So that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to play the prone game, where they're going to be very sneaky, play on the other side. But West has been playing this nice terrain here to not only give information, but also catch them in the act of trying to sandwich them from the other side.
True enough. Now advantages over on the team hailing in from Myanmar as well as the Philippines. Speaking of which, we have 2 teams from the Philippines, and this seemingly to be the best round for their respective region. And West Point Mamba have just shown dominance throughout the course of the battle with those long-range shots. Now, they do control majority of the sector of the map. Like, take a look at the minimap. Sure, it is showing you mostly these outskirts of the zone, but they have control of at least 50% of the sector. And now the only difference maker here could be Sin, where they could basically thrive while both teams commit into the battle. But the positioning from both sides with the most members have been looking to be pretty much sublime, where West Point Mamba hasn't really shown too much to the rest of GE. Whereas Genesis Esports, they are going on this 2-2 split, so they can basically focus fire onto anybody out there. And now finally getting info onto Chi. What? Yeah, just looking at him go, most of the members of West Point Mamba have managed to find those picks, even through the smokes, but now they are depleted. The rest of GE overwhelms them through this cove in the middle of the sector, and I don't think he's got a way out. He got to pick his fights carefully, and now he's also pissed about by the corner,
Richie!
and it will be Genesis Esports' first ever win in day 1 of the Wildcard Southeast Asia PMPL.
I am shocked that GE managed to pull that because Genesis Esports was in trouble. We saw them getting pincered by WPM by so many different areas. They were knocked down, 2 knocked down. But what they did was they just didn't panic, kept a cool mind. One person gets the reset, don't panic to get both at the same time, sending 2 players forward. And also really important to talk about how they're able to handle the push coming in from WPM. They had already anticipated that play because WPM has done it again and again. Get 1 knock, push forward. So what they did was did not move. It's stonewall play, holding those angles, perfectly played. The best counter for a team like WPM.
Yeah, and I really want to give it up to Ichi because he has also done a lot of repositioning. Look at the damage he does. Don't mind that 1 elimination point. Sure, it may not be the most amount, but he is a tank after all. Look at that. 254 points of damage being taken throughout the run, and he's still left standing. It's also thanks to his teammate that he is left surviving throughout the course of the map. And you just look at Genesis Esports, they're like undying cockroaches, right? Like, you knock one down, they pull back, and then they start to reposition. And because of the territory that they have created for themselves to have a big wraparound, West Point Mamba eventually ran out of space to work around with, despite them having the first-hand advantage initially, and then they start to lose out members after members, and it only takes a few more bullets to land the final hit to get this chicken dinner in return. And we got so many of all these stats on the screen. And just take a look. This time around, West Point Mamba as well as Vipers, like, they have, like, for some of the furthest distance travel. Of course, none in comparison with Sin, where they did rotate most of the way. But what's the trend here between all these teams? Long-range battles. Their prowess from long range have brought them so far into the top 4.
I think it's also really important to talk about how these teams were also very aggressive. And it's a very interesting situation. We saw one player play so far back or so far away. It's like a 3-1 formation coming through from them, where one person just focuses on those long-range picks, those kill steals, and the others either will push forward with the rest of the members, or they will just kind of wait it out. And we saw so many different kill steals happening on this particular map, where it's very, very cheeky, it's very frustrating. And we also have seen power. I mean, we saw how nasty it can be when you don't play together with teammates and get isolated.
That's right, and that is basically the biggest clutch lesson coming out of not only Few, but also all the other members of Power as well. Even when they were outmanned, they are never outgunned. Now, going into the final situation, this is the spread that I was talking about. After some quick resets, they repositioned so quickly, so it really draws the attention away from the members of West Point Mamba to deal with that situation. And this time around, the victors of the match, Genesis Esports, walks away with 18 total points, whereas West Point Mamba have their best record so far, second place with 13 points. And not forgetting, Vipers surge upwards with also 7 eliminations and 11 points.
This has been one of the most exciting maps we've seen so far, especially as we saw multi-team fights. It wasn't really like a one-on-one kind of situation. It was maybe a 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. We saw those, I would say, third parties happening as well. And we saw even sandwiching happening. So this makes it very, very exciting as we see how hungry these teams can be. Now, surging up to the top spot is going to be GE. They've been very, very consistent throughout all of these maps, I have to say. And despite some maps, they don't make it up to maybe the top 5, they still go out to the lobby with at least maybe a handful of kills in their pocket on top of that placement point. So 42 points, putting them way ahead of YG, Asia, and APG, who each have 1 chicken dinner each.
That's right, and they've already played 4 matches, so Yangon Galacticos as well as Asia have played 3, so there is still ample time for them to play catch-up as well. Eventually, that team will have to rest. Meanwhile, let's look at the other side of the bracket as well, where Flash Vision is slowly being pushed downwards. They still have, another game to be played out because this is only the 3rd matchup, and then you look at all the rest of the team. I think, like, the teams that have impressed the most from the past 2 rounds has to be Vipers as well as H2O, where most of the points have been collected in these 2 rounds itself. Whereas, of course, Axis, there is improvements, maybe not about enough, and Burmese goals. not looking like they have a good time throughout the course of the run.
I think like for these teams here at the very bottom of the bracket, they still have a lot to, I think, adjustments to make as they still try to get to know all of these teams. After all, it's still day number 1, and as a team that's just come into the big leagues, it does take some time for them to mentally prepare themselves to understand these patterns that each team has. And it always really, really benefits teams who understands patterns early. Regardless, we're gonna go for a quick break, and when we come back, it's gonna be the final map of the night. Miramar once again, Tashman and Contra. We'll see you guys in a little while.
Wake up.
Wake up.
You are stuck here.
You must accept the fact that there's no help but self-help. Come on, fight back. Remember, success is a journey, not a destination. Have faith in your ability. You will do just fine. Now, take them all! To know oneself is to study oneself in action with another person. express yourself. Have faith in yourself.
Is it time?
Welcome back once again to the PUBG Mobile Southeast Asia Wildcard Spring 2023. My name's Contra, and this is Tash Bunny, your casters for the entirety of the day. And as much as this being our final game of the evening, remember guys, there's a whole lot more going on for the entirety of the week, as we'll keep you up to speed with every team running for the top spot to see who makes it to the Southeast Asia Championship. And of course, once again, we'd like to remind you guys that there's a lot of cool stuff happening in your PUBG Mobile game itself. And you can check out the Neon's Assassin's Power